Hey everybody, I'm back. I have been reflecting a lot on my channel, continuing to develop my own form, and decided I wanted to do a series of kind of more academic things for my next few videos. There's a ton of content out there these days. There's lots of information about form development and critiquing and coaching, and I've been learning a lot conceptually about swing mechanics and harnessing forces and applying that gradually to my own body. And there were a couple of big picture things that I thought would be fun to get into. The way I want to frame that is by looking at professional movement when they were early in their form development, and then how it looks more in modern times to emphasize a few key features there and what I've been learning from that. So, first off, as usual, shout out to Seabass22, who has been putting the lion's share of work into me. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you again. And I want to dive right in with many people's, if not favorite, one of their top form examples, Simon Lizotte. So, what we're going to see here on the right is a more recent video of Simon's form. What we're going to see on the left is a video some years ago. The guy's been playing since he was 2 years old, so his movement is exceptional, shortly into his life. And I think one of the problems players run into when they try to learn form is they're trying to jump right to the thing on the right side. I'm going to show you modern Simon, and they aren't kind of witnessing or observing the form evolution people go through. And so that's going to be the theme for my next few videos here, is just kind of pointing out features. And I will do this kind of piecewise. I'm going to pick out one major theme per video, and these will be a little bit shorter and more consumable for everyone's attention span. So I'm going to focus on vertical force today. This is something that I think is often underemphasized and misunderstood, and sometimes outrightly taught to the contrary. And I'm going to put my foot down on a certain thing because I've not only read everything I can find, watched everything I can find, been coached about it, but now started to do it myself, which I think doing it helps you start to think about and understand things a little bit differently. So I'll never say there's only one right way to frame this. I think there's good diversity in coaching styles and form work. I just want to give you kind of a concept space to work with, some things for food for thought and evaluate. And again, what I show you today is not something I want you to just go ahead and try to do if your form isn't significantly developed. I think this is kind of a more advanced end of the content, but certainly something that's helpful to be aware of. So anyway, let's just watch it through. So we're going to show you Simon side by side with himself. Do this a couple times. Okay. So this video and any video I do on the pros will be linked below in the comments. So if you just want to study this yourself, you can go find it in the comment below. So what do you see right away? So I think what a lot of people see when they watch Simon in modern times is, oh, the guy's like kind of running or striding up sideways and then planting laterally and then throwing the disc at the target. And he is, in a sense. But I want to watch right here for this vertical force. And notice that young Simon, he's got this nice center balance and he's high off the ground. He's actually elevated all the way up, losing contact with the ground very briefly. He's de-weighted here is a way to say it. And as he moves through this transition move, I just want you to first watch on the left the amount of drop this young guy gets. So he's moved his head from roughly up here, relatively speaking, to all the way down here by the time he plants. And so there's this concept going around that, oh, your head needs to stay on the same level throughout the swing. Well, your head's attached to your body, and your body gets a free power advantage by dropping with gravity. Now, you can stretch that out horizontally, and you still got a gravity force interacting on you when you land in a horizontal plant, more like modern Simon. We'll see Calvin is on a big extreme there. He's very horizontal. But I want to think about the drop today. So you hopefully saw it pretty clearly in young Simon on the left. One more time. And if I may have your attention, please, let's go to Simon on the right. So let's watch for it. We're looking for the apex of his head. He's already starting to drop a little bit here in transition, but let's put his head around there. And once again, you would have seen that his head is dropping pretty significantly as he lands in the plant. So this is free power. And I think that you can generate momentum and power certainly laterally running sideways, as many players do. And you can generate power with more emphasis on the vertical, like young Lizotte. You can also kind of hide more of that and have a compromised transition. And so most players end up somewhere between this vertical and horizontal extreme. You don't really see anybody dropping directly vertically. There's some kind of angulation of the shift into the plant. And the reason they're not ruining their legs, which is my next theme here, is because they have impeccable mechanics when they land. And I'm going to talk about how much force is involved in this and why that force is a key to power, but also a liability. So you're going to notice here, and we'll return to this later, that, young Simon, again, had been already playing for years and was smashing. And this kid is moving well. So one of the things to notice about Simon is that when he lands, keep an eye on this front lead here. So he's about to shift from behind, as we call it. He's going to get a toe lead that helps sort of transfer force quickly and delay the impact on the body at the same time. So he's getting a really heavy crush into this. And that's sort of the abrupt bracing process. You can even see when he was younger, sometimes he'd get a little bit more kind of bound up and follow through once in a while. He's a young, flexible guy, and he can take that kind of impact and transfer it. But if this was any less efficient than it is, you can imagine this kid is putting serious torque force into his knee. So he has to get a good diagonal shift, lateral shift into that brace. He has to have clean hip mechanics. He has to be well postured over top of it. I mean, look at this. You're probably not moving this way if you're not as advanced as Simon. He's got this beautiful balance as he drops into the plant, which is transferring the power and protecting his body. You see all the same stuff here. We'll talk about postural differences later in relative sequence and timing. But with the dropping component, either way, that's, again, simultaneously power at low effort and safe. So what do you do with this in your form? Well, my advice is get coached and learn more and more and more about mechanics. I am 37 now. I can't move as well as I did 15 or 20 years ago, but you can find tricks in your form with a coach's good eye and learn how to harness them gradually over time. So I didn't even approach anything remotely close to this until many, many, many months with standstills, especially because I don't have any athletic background to speak of. So I have to say all of those caveats because, again, for anybody watching, the goal here is not for you to go leaping like Simon Lizotte, trying to generate tons of force out of the gate. I still want you to think slow and steady leads the way. That gives you the tools to move better so that when you work with bigger forces, you're less likely to get hurt. And again, that's what I care about. Getting better to me is more power at lower effort safely. Okay. There are lots of ways to generate more power that are less safe and more effortful. And you see a trend where the younger athletic people tend to pull them off, and they either stop playing because they get uninterested in it, or maybe they get hurt later, or maybe they have bodies that are taking that abuse better than others. I got to tell you, as somebody basically starting this in his mid 30s, you got to mind these force mechanics. And that's why I'm saying a lot about it the first time talking about vertical force, because what I show you next is not advice. It's an observation. Okay. So this is me yesterday. And I'm doing this video now because there's rarely a moment where I'm like, aha, here's the bigness of form. And this is a big breakthrough for me. And it's sort of like a death by a thousand cuts, frustrating process. Nudge a thing here, see how it goes, right? So we made a very minor tweak in my form, my coach's recommendation, that got me moving off that dreaded rear leg better. I've had trouble with this for more than a year. And that allows me to kind of more naturally spring and drop into the plant at low effort. And as soon as I started getting the first hint of that mechanic, I was like, oh, that's an aha for me. It's like, aha, like that's how my leg needs to work. As part of that, because of all the other work I had done, it was pretty easy at that point to connect it to this pendulum pump style mechanic that I've been working with for a long time. Play through, sorry. And what I hope that looks like to you is a pretty smooth swing. What you don't see is the force and what I feel when I do it. And I want to talk about that for a second. So let's think about young Simon. Let's look at me. Again, I'm a husky big guy, about 235. I'm mostly meat in the upper body. I have underdeveloped legs. So again, I'm not going to use Heimburg levers to move me sideways. If I could do it when I was younger, my legs are not in the shape to do it now. And so, in some ways, this is a compensating form for that. But you go look at Kristen Katar and Girthy, and they're kind of making their legs longer by extending more vertically with their hops. They actually ride down a much bigger vertical distance than most players, um, than um, than you might expect. And so go and look for that. And so this is something I started to pick up, but was just not getting off the leg well. We tweaked this leg with a couple of muscular adjustments. Basically, it was really a mechanics thing, and immediately I was able to take my weight very high. So the pump is helping that, right? This system has to work together. That's why this is not just a fix your form piece of advice. When I land, this isn't great. I'm still going to need work on this. But what I've done is as soon as I'm landing, I'm resisting and transferring that immediately up through my hip. And now I'm going to get that through the lagging swing power. Okay. And I'm going to get a measurement later, hopefully. But this is coming out just faster, easier than it ever has before, which is basically why I started this new series here. So follow through's light and easy. I don't feel any torque on the knee. My back is protected. All the stuff I want as somebody that would like to be playing for a while. So let's talk about that force thing. So I'm launching off the ground, and it's not really like a forceful jump. It's using momentum to get off the ground. So already low effort. My transition move is a controlled fall. So I've got leverage into the rear leg. You can see this in Girthy, who leans away even more to get more clearance through his hips. But I've got leverage into this rear hip. I'm coiling up. I'm loading up all of these core muscle groups, oblique slings. I'm getting a shoulder stretched out and ready to swing the arm through, pull the arm through, however you want to phrase it. And as soon as I land, that whole stretched out chain unwinds and throws through. I ended up, not with horrible balance on this leg at this point. So what's going on under the hood here? Because I think people don't quite have numbers on just how much force is coming through. You could do some simple physics on this. And at that height, and I've done the proportions, so these are all estimates, but I'm dropping maybe about 15 inches, right? So I'm not really trying to get much more vertical than that because I don't want my feet to completely lose touch with the ground at this point. It's still helpful to get that feedback. When I land, something like just from this vertical component, then at my mass, is going to add up to about 900 pounds of available force. So imagine you're not moving as well as Simon or even me at the amateur level, and then dropping briefly 900 pounds on your leg. Well, you wouldn't want that leg to be collapsing, right? Because if it's collapsing and your body is trying to swing, well, there's going to be torque through things like ankles and knees. Okay. So many players struggle with the idea that the plant leg is a resistor. It's kind of like a spring trying to resist the earth, pushing it away. And if you're in good posture, it's going to start to unload through your front hip, and then your body naturally can swing through. This is a very different way than most people teach this, and it comes from baseball and pitching training primarily. You'll see it in other swinging for power sports. So that's something that I took a long time to learn. And when I land like this, you can see I'm starting to kind of get that bracing tilt effect in the posture in the body. And by the time this hip is touching the ground, and by touching, I mean it's getting the force transfer, my hip is already starting to clear because of the way I moved off the rear side. So this becomes a very smooth motion. And then it opens up that whole front side to swing or pull the disc through and throw it with higher speed. So you take that and then you add whatever horizontal momentum I take in. And those are your two primary physical forces: acceleration for free with gravity, leveraging off the ground, not necessarily inconsistent with gravity, but orthogonal to it. That's running, right? Is going along the ground at a tangent to the surface of the earth. So the question might be there, well, wait a minute, what about all these guys on tour? Albert Tom's got this really smooth form, such a casual walk up. Well, so again, I'm going to just remind you immediate levers. These guys are like 6 foot something. They have large exterior levers, meaning very long limbs, narrower interior levers like shoulders. Leverage through the legs really matters because you get more leverage in that controlled free fall. So look at your body and try to figure out what is more naturally aligned for power. For me, especially with an industry background, falling in vertically, kind of like a controlled fall or jump, is going to get me easier power, period. I could be convinced otherwise, but I'm still waiting, right? Because you see this trend even in the pro level. The stockier the player gets, the more they're relying on the vertical component in general. So if we go ahead and we look at some pros and you start to wonder, well, wait, is it really there in everybody? Well, it depends. So sometimes when players are powering down and throwing up shots or trying to deal with low ceilings, you'll see this adjust. So you can't just look at one shot and conclude a single thing about form. You have to sort of get a 3D view of the force mechanics and how it works. And so for developing Lizotte, we already saw that example. What about young versus modern Macbeth? Right. So sometimes it said, oh, the head stays on the same level. I mean, clearly not is the short way to say it. Go look around a bunch of videos when the guy is starting to mash for more distance, and he modifies his posture in some ways almost more than any pro. That's one of the remarkable things about Macbeth. As he adds power, if available, he'll usually still be getting a significant gravity assist from this. So again, think of this as hundreds of pounds of force available once he lands, getting it up through the hip and leading the swing. Eagle looks horizontal, still gets some vertical force. Albert Tom looks pretty horizontal to you, still gets some force. Calvin Heimburg, maybe the most vertical looking to my of them all. He seems like he's just kind of sprinting sideways. There's still some vertical force, right? So these are measures of proportion. It's a continuum. Diagnostically, right, what do you do from a practical perspective? Well, take it slow and easy. You have to develop the body and develop the form in ways that are prepared to manage forces like this. Like, these guys are athletes. There's no way around it. They're young, they're limber. Most of them are strong in ways that you might not expect through a lot of support and core muscles. These are the muscles that start to get taxed when you add these forces as your form improves. So you can't just pretend you're Albert Tom and blast it 680 feet or whatever. Almost certainly not. What you can do is learn from these examples and realize that gravity is a friend. And if you master the mechanics of how your legs should work, they help you get that force into your throws. Now, a lot of athletes do that very naturally, especially if they had relevant sports backgrounds. I was not one of them. And so I'm really grateful now that I've had the attitude to back up and slow down when things aren't looking good in my form. The distance always improves afterward. Always. I don't talk about distance much. I use distance as a measure, but it's for me the efficiency of the chain, the mechanics, right? Am I doing things that get me forces for free before I tax my body, right? Before you tax the body. So if you can throw farther and it's less effort and less tax, why wouldn't you? At least that's my disposition here. And so again, I think some of these themes hopefully interested in you here. And I'll return to other components of Simon's form now versus then to illustrate certain features and be a little more concise with each of the following videos there. So hope you found something interesting there and that you come back later. Thanks, guys.